these people have to be the ones to help. And especially if there are people who have an extra eye for diversity or minority ethnic cultures, it's so important that they are the voices that are being heard. It is super important that they are the ones that you see in the media. They are the ones that you can speak to, in a low threshold, and work more preventively instead of treatment based. So that is my number one passion in psychology. I don't understand why we don't work more preventively, why we don't talk to more 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. One of the things that especially African men feel is guilt. Is guilt to that you are not strong enough, you are not you are not a caretaker enough to be able to deal with your issues and everyone else's, because that's a responsibility that we have learned to put on our own shoulders.
Hello there, and welcome again to another episode of Africans Abroad, the podcast. This is your host, Christopher Eves Ricks. Today, I got with me a very interesting gentleman. He is a Norwegian-born Ghanian who has background in child developmental psychology. And from what I gathered, he is very smart. You can go ahead and agree.
Very much so. Super
Right.
smart.
Intelligent and seems very interesting to speak to. In fact, the first time I got to watch him was on a local show called The Diversity Show, where he got to speak brilliantly on mental health awareness within the African community in Norway. And I also got to find out that that's not the only thing he does. He's also a musical artist and a DJ. So I'm really excited to speak to you, George, the next African Abroad on the Africans Abroad podcast, ladies and gentlemen, is no other than Mr. George K. Ofori. Yeah.
Thank you. No flash photography.
Right.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Man. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Welcome. I'm glad that you could show up.
It's a busy and cold time. So this is a pretty good time to have something, nice, a bit warmer to look forward to. So
yeah. So that's I appreciate it, really do. So George, introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Well, my name is George Ofori. I'm Norwegian-born Ghanaian. I'm 29, and my academic background is within psychology, child developmental psychology, educational psychology as well. And you could say, in a sense, my day job is very reflective of that. So I'm a high school teacher, and I also work as a pedagogic advisor for kids who have academic and social struggles in school, as well as kind of coaching both teachers and mentors on how to reach out to these kids in the best possible way. I also do, as mentioned earlier, tons of sort of seminars, conferences, and talks about mental health, because that is a very sort of dear topic to me, and especially mental health aimed at creating awareness within minority ethnic groups, both because on both sides of the table there's not enough people doing that work. There's not enough people who are giving the information about mental health and mental health issues, mental health sort of preventive measures to be able to counteract mental health issues, but also because there's not in a sense, there's not enough people who are the audience, basically. So, trying to kind of reach out on both sides of the table to be able to really grasp a hold of what really is a very a very vulnerable group in terms of, mental health preservation, but also in terms of, addressing culturally sensitive and culturally specific mental health, issues, because that's one of the things that in a sense is the problem, is that we've kind of smushed minority ethnic groups into one grouping, but
we all
someone
have different cultural backgrounds, so
exactly, I mean, someone from Kenya and someone from Ghana have a vastly different cultural backgrounds and also different cultural needs. So I think where I am right now in my own development of understanding how we think and how we can grow, is I'm trying to also understand the nuances in cultural differences between, these within groups. So yeah, that's I do some writing as well. I write in the newspapers and in magazines, mostly about culture, but also trying to sort of open the door for diverse cultural expressions. And that also leads me to kind of, with my passion for music production, music writing, and
fascinating.
Yeah, all things music.
That's awesome, man. You are the definition of jack of all trades, literally. But that's really fascinating. So just a quick little background on you. You mentioned that you were born in Norway. Do you know the reason why your family had to relocate to Norway from Ghana?
Yeah. Well, so my dad came here first. He came in the late 80s. He was essentially looking for, a combination of further education and job opportunities. He was first in Germany and then kind of felt that wasn't really for him. So then he relocated further up north, essentially to a country that they didn't really know too much about, about Black people,
right.
or Black culture. So I mean, he and sort of his generation, they had to learn that they had to learn by doing with no manuals really. And then he'd gone back to Ghana for a summer vacation, met my mom. Shortly after, they got married, and then our entire family kind of started here. So I have 4 brothers, and we're all born. Born here in Norway.
Can I ask where were you born?
I was born in Trondheim.
Trondheim. So you speak the dialect.
Yeah, I do speak the dialect. It's a pretty poor version of the dialect actually.
Every time I hear a Black man speaking Trondheim, it's awesome. Like,
yeah, okay. I'm happy you think so.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. It's just not expected.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I think people do kind of get a little bit of a whoa,
yeah.
When you hit them with the dialect, especially the older Norwegians, they just
like, what's happening? Like,
like what? What?
Yeah. All right. So I think it's so fascinating because I don't think I've met an African around your age that was born, first generation, born in Norway. That's not very common to come across.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting, and also I would really like to know just a little bit about how your childhood was. Growing up in Trondheim in the early 90s.
Early 90s. Yeah, from 92. I was in Trondheim from 92 till 99. Actually, I think we moved to Ghana in January 2000. We moved to Ghana. So up until then, I had finished sort of kindergarten, and I had just finished first grade. So then halfway in the second grade, my family and I moved to Ghana. And there I was for 6 years, I think. So I pretty much finished my entire primary school and I started junior high school there, and then relocated back to Norway when I was 13. So it was a little bit of a back and through. But I mean, childhood was. I always say, and I always felt that my childhood really was kind of a micro. I would say like a microcosm of my life. So I'm the kind of person that, like, if I go to either go to a restaurant or like we're ordering food, I kind of want like a little bit of everything,
Yeah,
just to have
yeah.
like a nice sort of a plate of diverse taste and stuff
Right,
like that.
right.
And I feel like that's pretty much how my childhood was kind of laid up to be this um, influence of many different places, people, and cultures. And it was very interesting because I think it also, I mean, the main thing I take away is definitely like tolerance. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like I've met so many different people and have been exposed to so many different sort of backdrops that, I mean, at this point in my life, there's
You
few things that
gotta
I
you
can,
gotta thick
yeah,
skin. You put on
yeah,
a thick
yeah,
skin.
exactly. Like
That's what
there's few
happens.
things
Yeah.
that people would do, and I kind of go like, wait, what?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, I'm a familiar of the fact that people are trying to sail their own oceans and they're trying to keep afloat to the best of their ability. I don't think there's too many people out there who wake up with an intention to destroy. I think people are trying to survive.
Yeah, yeah.
I try to be as tolerant and as understanding as possible, and a huge part of that is because growing up in two very different places.
Hmm.
So that, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm interested in knowing how come what prompted you to study psychology? Like where did that come from?
um I'd known for a while, probably from Ghana, child in
Hmm.
Ghana, I wanted to do psychology. I was slightly unsure of
You
which
mean since you
end.
since you were a kid?
Yeah, since maybe fourth fourth to fifth grade. My mom still has a story of, I think, as a fourth grader, we were asked in class, what do you want to do, what do you want to be, and most people wanted to be firemen or footballers or pop stars or doctors or stuff like that. I wanted to be a psychologist. Um, and so I'd always kind of known from quite early that, yeah, no, I definitely could do this. And then I think what prompted me to really go for it was that I understood after a little while that it is a very nice way to help people, pretty much. So I've always been kind of hell bent on the fact that, given that I am in this position of luck and of advantage, I have to pay it forward, but not just pay forward because it's a thing that people have to do, but I feel that is what gives me fulfillment, is to be able to help people, especially those who need the help but don't have the means to either get it or to start looking for it. So then I found, okay, psychology is a great way for me to do so, and I started, the process of getting into it. I remember in high school, I started having some psychology courses in school, and then from there I went into the application of it. And I didn't actually go for like the clinical psychology course, which I think maybe surprised both myself and many people. But I did also feel at the time that it was the right decision, and I still do, because I kind of went the long way around, just trying to like learn as much as possible from the subject, and then be able to try to help people to the best of my ability from there. One thing that I do regret, however, that I didn't think of until there was a little bit too late, because I did both the bachelor and then the master and like one specialist year, is that psychology is a supremely important subject today, especially because there's too many people who need help. They need, someone to talk to. They need someone to help them discover their own tools. But there's not enough people who can do that. And from a cultural perspective, psychology is very poorly balanced in terms of diversity. So cultural psychology, for example, was never something that came up during my education, which is actually quite strange because you are saying then that you are not equipping psychologists to be able to deal with culturally sensitive questions, which is, so rooted and so deeply and intertwined, in society and also with mental health. So that's been one of my sort of big criticisms of my own courses and stuff like that here, is that, for the first, we aren't, not too many of us are applying to do this. And for the second, like, there is no natural sort of point where we can talk about the experience of being Black in in a predominantly white majority country, and that is something that doesn't necessarily have to be a constant trauma story. So that's one of my things with psychology, is that psychology is not just, it's not just saving,
you can
saving from
also
trauma.
heal from speaking about the good stuff that's
Yes,
happening.
exactly. You really can. You really can, and you can. Most importantly, you can do preventive work quite early, so that people don't end up in a situation where they need treatment, but they rather can have a situation where they need guidance.
This was my fascination about you, because when I was blown away when I got to see the diversity show, and how deep you went into some of these issues, including anxiety, mood disorder, and depressions, and all of that amongst. You went a bit general, but you also narrowed it down to minorities and Africans in Norway. And I'm fascinated by it, because just frankly, even the fact that you have two African dudes sitting right here speaking about mental health generally, out and putting it out there, it's something that's very difficult to come across. So therefore, the question arises: why do you think there's a huge stigma within our community about when it comes to mental health issues? Or that, because there is.
There's
no denying that.
There's a huge stumbling block, and I think there's actually many reasons to it. But if I'm to boil them down to, let's say, three, the first, one of the first real issues is that, for all the positive and encouraging and uplifting things that religion does for us and for our way of life, one of the things that it doesn't really allow space for is human agency, as in you taking control over how you feel and how you think. Because if you have succeeded, you thank God. If you are in trouble, you seek God. You understand? But when you do that, our religion at least has taught us that we leave all our troubles with God, and then we kind of wait for redemption. But the reality of it, and this is, it's never really to discount religion as a way of life, but the reality of it is that if religion is the way you want to go, you still have to combine it with you doing actual work for yourself. If you are ill and you don't go to a doctor and you are home praying, your chances of getting worse are greater than going to the doctor. You understand? So you still have to kind of marry those two ideas, and that is, and I think you could say religion part one is that it's blocks agency. The second part of religion is that mental health struggles or disorders have a tendency of being viewed as possession by some sort of devil entity, or or you know,
Or you're
or
crazy, you're going
madness.
mad.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, you're
madman.
mad. You're a madman, you know.
Uh-huh.
And that is, I mean, obviously not a helpful way to view other people, which is quite strange because you would think that very religious people would have that very natural compassion and, you know, and
Yeah,
ability to
yeah.
see. But it's also because some of the descriptions in scriptures, like the Bible, for example,
Mm.
tend to view those who maybe have some sort of mental disorder. You view them as, you know, as beyond salvation, basically.
Mm.
So the devil has them now. So you have to pray that the devil releases this person from, you know, from his claws or stuff like that. And it also creates this connotation that, you know, these people can, maybe that they are damaged or they are less worth. They're not worth saving in the same way. So
Right, right.
that's, you know, that's also a thing. And then the third point I probably like, you know, like to conclude that part on, in terms of the stigma that is created, is that well, it actually does kind of tie in with the religion because it becomes our tradition, it becomes our culture.
Mm-hmm.
But also mental health is a fairly new language to
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
basically. You know,
Like,
I always try to put these things into perspective. So I actually should know this with Liberia, but with Ghana,
mm-hmm,
we were independent in 57.
mm-hmm,
So that's about 65 years ago,
mm-hmm.
next year, actually. So we've not been Ghana for more than, at most, 2 generations.
Right.
Right? So the issues that we've had to deal with and the issues that individuals, especially within the diaspora, have to deal
Mm-hmm.
with in trying to manage their two cultures, their two identities, those issues are not issues that we are used to putting medical terms on or even psychological terms on. Understand? It's on you. Get up and work hard and everything will be fine. And that is an ideology that is not ours. That's the American dream. But the American dream doesn't work for us, you understand? Because this, you know, if you think about it, we grew up to understand that if you work hard, everything will be fine, everything will be okay. So then imagine your first shock when you go to apply for a job. You've worked hard, you're super qualified. You don't get the interview because someone didn't read the application. If they saw your name and they recognized that, nah, this person is going to be trouble for us. I don't think this person is good enough in Norwegian or English. No job for you.
That has happened times 25.
Times 25. Same here.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, and I think most people, you know, of our shared background or even common backgrounds can attest to the fact that this happens, right? So now, no matter how hard you've worked, no matter how skilled you are,
Mm-hmm.
You aren't getting into the door. And it's just because of the color of your skin or the sound of your name.
Mm-hmm.
That takes a mental toll.
Yeah, it does.
Yes, it does. It takes a mental toll because now you're doubting yourself. There's tons of, you know, of dissonance, and you're going, yeah, but I'm super smart. I work hard. Why am I not getting the chance to prove myself?
Mm-hmm.
And those two competing ideas become such a difficult thing to process that I think it's not. I don't think it's strange that, you know, a lot of anxiety stems from that. Phobias come from that. Depression comes from that. Personality disorders come from that. Of course, because you are, you know, you are trying to make your brain come up with answers that your brain has absolutely no chance
No
to.
answer. Yeah. But what you're saying that says to me that it doesn't take much to actually flip, pivot that stigma,
Yeah.
because for example, the religious view that you took
Mm.
that you mentioned, I'm a Christian myself, and I'm aware of that you would have a headache and your dad could be a reverend and he would tell you to go and take an aspirin or a paracetamol.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if something, or take you to the doctor, but the same thing, if for some reason it wouldn't apply if you were showing some signs of mental disorder or just some difficult trauma or something. They will tell you to snap out of it and
exactly.
So that was one point. And what you also mentioned about these same issues that we're dealing with, especially for us in the diaspora, of just living everyday life that's a different kind of struggle than other people experience of people of this, of that country, the ethnics of that country.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think there's also a little issue to it too that comes with the fact that Africa is only just now growing its middle class.
Yeah.
And if you take even in Europe and in the US, when people were struggling just to get food on the table, mental health wasn't, nobody cared for it. It's not
Exactly,
the priority, right?
Yeah.
You would probably have to reach a certain economic situation in your life, a certain growth in your life to be able to say that even if you didn't have that stigma, it takes a lot to be able to say, I am allocating these funds to go and take care of my mental well-being.
It's not usual. It's not usual.
It's not. So I do understand in a way that it's been an issue, but it also seems like there's right now, at least in most first world countries, you have this is a topic that's been widely discussed, and we are involved too, because it in our own ways and all of that, we are involved too. And so it takes just conversations like these, and public conversations about such things to be able to raise awareness of it, and just do something, because it doesn't take much to flip it. You just have to hear a friend that listen, I was going through some stuff and I had to see somebody, and it helps a lot. And that takes me even to my next question, because I would even be transparent to say that this kind of involves me. That's why I'm very fascinated about it, because I would like to even ask, what do you think some of the common causes of these issues? We mentioned something about the like job situations and whatnot, but there are some cultural, I heard you speak about it, some cultural issues that cause us to have some psychological barriers and stuff that we need to discuss about. Weirdly enough, I would put myself in that situation and say that I was, a couple of months ago, I was in Oslo and I spoke to a lady. She's from Ghana too, actually. And she mentioned she was doing she was writing some play or working on a book or something, and she was concentrating on mental health issues amongst minorities. And some way, somehow we got into this conversation, and I mentioned that, listen, these things are so different for us. I give myself as example. I grew up in a war-torn country, Civil War. As a kid, experienced a lot of atrocities, seeing a lot of atrocities, people being killed, walking past decaying bodies and all of that. And as a child, and you would think that those are the things that I would need to heal from. Actually, it's not. It's not. I don't give it a thought in the world. I don't dream about anything. I do not. I just talk about it as an experience that I've gone through. But interestingly enough, just earlier this year, I I sought out help in I tried to get an online help,
Yeah.
and it was mainly directed towards my part to play in failed relationships of the past
Yeah.
that I did not want. If something was continuing to occur, and
Yeah.
I
The
had the
pattern. Yeah.
desire,
Yeah.
desire
Yeah.
to make it better, I needed to sit with myself and try to find some answers, and maybe bring a second party in and talk to somebody about this. And it was super, super helpful, you know. But here was my, so that was the example I give her. Like, sometimes we've experienced a whole lot from back home, a whole lot of stuff before moving over here. And you would think that those situations where you would
Those
hunt
very
us out,
extreme,
extreme
the
situations would
extreme
hunt
ones.
us.
Yeah.
No, sometimes it's just these things like what you mentioned, sending over 20 applications and you haven't been called for one, or entering a workplace and being treated a certain way because and
applying for a place to live and
exactly,
not
it's your own money. You want to pay for somewhere to live, but you are prevented because, right? So I saw it as interesting, but another thing that I saw was a problem was the fact that I wanted to speak to somebody that related to me, had the same language, and that was a challenge. And I really believe that if it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have found an online therapist to be able to speak to. I got to speak to a lady in the U.S. For a month or two, every week. And it was super helpful, but it comes down to this issue again. Even those of us that are seeking out or would like to get this help, we don't have enough resources or people that can relate to our type of issues that we're going through, and man, I just wanted to mention that there.
It's one of the it's one of the cascading headaches because we kind of go, okay, we have to break the stigma down, we have to create more openness, we have to get more people to talk, and then you finally get people to talk, and then there's no one on the other end of the conversation who can give culturally appropriate responses.
Right.
And that's what I don't like about the psychology education in the West, is that culturally appropriate therapy or conversation is not something that people aspire to. And that's very strange. But at the same time, if you are looking at, as you mentioned, we are still growing our middle class. So mental health is not exactly at the top of our,
priority,
for our priority list. And therefore, we also don't have an ecosystem of psychologists and patients who are used to talking to each other yet. That will come. But, until then, we are still going to have to try to cope, having to try to explain all of this to someone who naturally isn't inclined to understand you. And yes, that will definitely change. But then you would think at the same time that, okay, so now if you are a white or, European, Eurocentric psychologist, and you understand this struggle, you would think that, okay, but then maybe as a psychologist, I am going to try to prepare myself to be as culturally flexible as possible so that I can't get all the references and get everything, but at least I have a sensitivity to it.
Right.
And that is actually a responsibility that psychologists should have, but they don't take that responsibility because it's extra work and because their education hasn't told them that it's important enough.
I get that. And it's what could be done about it is the question. I mean, you as a professional, the question goes, well, I would ask the question, does it necessarily have to be solved by quote unquote professionals? Like I would give an example of I know that in the US this it's becoming more popular to become counselors, you know, take courses to become counselors, online counselors and stuff, relationship therapists or advisors or whatnot. I even took it upon myself with a couple of guys that I know that we you know, have the same life ideology and stuff, and open. In fact, it actually happened coincidentally. We summertime we took a hiking trip, and then we're just three dudes, and we just spoke. You know, we're just transparent and open and spoke. You know, pour into each other and just spoke about real life situations happening. And we were just bouncing off each other and giving advices and, you know, disagreeing, but, you know, having arguments. But it was so fulfilling that after that day, we decided like we should do this often, you know, meet and just talk and just bounce off each other, because at least we understand things in the same way. Even, and that's what I'm trying to get to, even that is something that helps. But there has to be, in my mind, there has to be something that can be done within our local community or local society, that we don't have to wait for
a freshly educated psychologist,
or government to implement these things, that you need to concentrate on minorities too, so that they're because believe me, man, I checked in Norway, and I found one English speaking guy in Oslo. He had a private practice, and it was it was so expensive that I don't even remember how much. You know, that's why I decided to check abroad. I mean, just something to talk about. Do you think there's a way to go around it, at least?
Well, I think I think, or I know there's a way to go around it. So the way to go around it is to sort of to be a working psychologist is a very closed and narrow path in Norway. You have to have gone so and so routes to be able to do that. The problem, however, is that in closing that path, you've also closed the avenues for other people to be able to explore different ways to connect and speak to people. So it's a two-pronged attack. On one hand, the Norwegian government has to stop with this elitist idea that you only educate so and so many or so and so few psychologists a year, and then these are the only ones who are able to offer any kind of help. Now, yes, there's a lot of research that says that, you know, you have to be very careful and mindful of the kind of help that you are offering, because, you know, there's always the potential risk that you could actually make things worse for somebody. But here's the thing: you guys went hiking, and you spoke on a level that was relatable for each of you. You agreed that it was helpful. It felt like a relief, I'm sure, after having the conversation. And you've also agreed that you will do this again because you see the help in connecting with people on a very low threshold basis. Isn't that what you want out of a psychologist? That's what you want out of therapy. You know, you don't want therapy to be this hugely bureaucratic thing where you have to fill out tons of forms, wait 18 months, go to this thing that we do in Norway. You'd go to your doctor, and your doctor would then send a referral to a psychologist. But before you get to the psychologist, the psychological department, or the DPS as it's called, the district psychiatrical department, they do an evaluation of you.
Are you
to
kidding
see
me?
whether you are eligible for the help.
Eligible for
And
the help.
if they find anything in your substance usage background, or if they find anything at all that they feel could influence your mental health, then you don't get the help that you would need. Then they go, okay, but you have to stop doing this and it will be fine, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why there's so many people in the queue as the EPS, because the consideration and the evaluation times are so long, and so many people get thrown out of the queue.
But is that the same case in private practices too?
Yeah. So in private practice, you don't go through the whole evaluation thing.
Right.
But look at how much it costs.
Yeah.
Right. So then when the question is, who gets the private help? It's those who can afford it. That's a class thing. And when it's a class thing, we end up losing more than we end up winning. You know. So what we need to do, the government needs to open up that box and find better, more nuanced ways to license and certify individuals to be able to help on a low threshold basis. And whilst that happens, people who are talented, who care enough for this, and who are willing to do the work to follow the right principles to be able to help, these people have to be the ones to help. And especially if there are people who have an extra eye for diversity or minority ethnic cultures, it's so important that they are the voices that are being heard. It is super, super important that they are the ones that you see in the media. They are the ones that you can speak to, you know, in a low threshold, and work more preventively instead of treatment based. So that is my number one passion in psychology. I don't understand why we don't work more preventively, why we don't talk to more 14, 15, 16-year-old kids than leaving them, you know, and there's so many policies that punish kids who begin to show signs of struggling early. You know, one of them is this fravashidense, which has now been scrapped for this school year because of COVID. But the fravashidense basically says that if you have more than 10% absence in any given subject in high school, you don't get a grade, and therefore, in the worst case scenario, you don't get your diploma, your certificates, right? You can't do much without your high school, you know, diploma.
Yeah.
And those who mostly ended up having tons of absence were those who just mentally weren't up for it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they end up being dropouts.
Yeah. And then they end up being dropouts.
Yeah.
So I think it's always strange to me to hear, especially the last government. It's always strange for me to hear the Norwegian government kind of go, oh, we really, we are really betting on, mental health now. We wanted, we are promoting good mental health practices. But then on the other side of it, this is what is happening. You've created this sort of what's it called? This bottleneck effect, where there's tons of people who need help, but very few of them actually get through to, breathe the fresh air outside the bottle. And meeting them on the outside is tons of people who could help, but very strict regulations mean that very few actually end up becoming psychologists. So we're not really matching the problem with the solution. And one solution there is to open up our definition of solutions. More people to be able to be advisors, counselors, more people to be able to talk to people before they become patients. Just build this common understanding. Okay, what is important to us to talk about? Okay, you are a young girl, you are a young guy. What is concerning you? In Oslo, there's this program called CampCom, And I had some weekly discussions there with a group of boys, at risk youth, 17, 18 to 22, 23, boys from Eastern Africa mostly. And they came every single Friday. We spoke about all kinds of things, social media usage and mental health. And then we ended up after a month or so of talking, having this very sort of straight to the point mental health in youth. And if you guys feel this, if you guys feel that, reach out, let's have a conversation. And you don't have to feel that you are inconveniencing anybody by feeling the way you feel, because that's the problem. One of the things that especially African men feel is guilt. Is guilt to that you are not strong enough, you are not you are not a caretaker enough to be able to deal with your issues and everyone else's, because that's a responsibility that we have learned to put on our own shoulders, and that responsibility carries a lot of stress. Definitely. And a lot of a lot of expectation. So we have to also learn how to shed the expectation that you being the leader of your household or of your culture or of your community, you're not going to be a very good leader if you are shattering yourself on the inside. Knowing when to say, okay, I'm in trouble now, or okay, now I need to include more people into my perspective. I need to be able to talk about how I feel, and then being able to actually resolve that with communication and with will, that's what creates a good leader. So, I think a very long answer to a very good question, but quite simply, the solution has to be a two-frontal attack. Government needs to open up the definition of who can help, and we need good people who can help to step forward and help, and especially if they have a background that allows them to understand more people and to be present for more people. We need them. So they a huge effort there to recruit them and to open the floor for them would be fantastic.
Listen, I feel like we could go on talking about this kind of stuff forever, because this is your field, you have a passion for it, and I've recently I would direct it more to me having a passion for family growth, the growth of families, especially within our African communities, where we tend to it seems like we're losing that value little by little. And because one of the main reasons I'm passionate about it is because of the building of generational wealth and financial, kingdoms. And that mainly comes from a family, generates from family being structured and put together and being helped together. And a lot of these issues that we're going through could be solved both on personal levels or relational levels, or even between your children. Being able to, I can see me, a child of mine being able to go and speak to somebody because I don't understand certain things that they're going through, and take, we go together and speak to somebody. I don't see nothing wrong with that, but it's just a way to be able to keep families together. It's been, we live in a society where our people don't last together in relationships anymore. And then you also have our children being taken from us because of, split from, and it's just a demolition of families. And that's where I believe my passion is directing towards, even with what I'm doing here. It's, trying to just get people's stories out there and try to share common experiences that maybe could help each other, encourage each other, help each other heal, and what have you. So I think we could go on with this
Yeah.
forever, but we're just gonna move on. Listen, I've been recently thinking about doing some starting some Instagram
Yeah.
live discussions.
Mhm. Yeah.
And this particular topic, I would really like to bring in other people to get their
Yeah.
feedback on what this is about. And if you will be interested sometime,
I'd love to.
get on this, and we just try to
Yeah.
host something and chop it up, let
Yeah.
people
That'd
give
be
their
good.
intake and find out what we can learn from that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That'd be
yeah.
good.
All right, all
Hmm.
right. George, what does your no a day in George's life look like? When it comes
Yeah, a day in George's life. Well, it's a huge part of the day is work. So it's
Mhm.
either, teaching, like a clean cut teaching day,
Yeah,
or it's an office day talking to different families, students themselves, and pretty much doing the whole coaching bit.
mhm.
So we have, in the company that I work with, Mentor Norway, we have a very sort of regimented way of analyzing what students need to be able to succeed, or to be able to at least have a better time with their subjects. And we work on a very sort of like needs basis. And it's a very interesting way of working, because then you kind of ensure that you can really cover as many bases as possible. So this work, I try to squeeze in more and more music these days, to listen to. I listen to a ton of podcasts between everything, but I'm
Yeah,
trying to, also like create like a dedicated time I mean, not just like listen, but like actively listen to music. And now I just moved, so I'm trying to set up uh, I guess you could say both a workstation, but also like a play station,
yeah, yeah.
where like I can listen to vinyl, or listen to one of my million CDs, or
Hmm.
find new tracks, and just take the time out to actually be able to both listen to them, but also be able to like examine them closely and stuff like that. So the music is coming more and more back into like the daily life, and otherwise it's just talking to friends, keeping good relations going, talking to family. I have a pretty big family, so
Fascinating.
just
Yeah,
checking on
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good, man. Sounds like an interesting
Yeah,
life you live in
it's
there.
not bad.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about music.
yeah.
Interestingly enough, does 2015 Trondheim Scythe ring a bell?
Yeah, it does ring a bell.
It does, it does, it does.
Yeah, yeah, it does ring a bell. It does
Tell
ring
me
a bell.
about you. So from
Yeah,
the little research I did, it seems like George was in the whole Trondheim music
yeah, music scene.
movement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really
What was
tried
that
to
about?
yeah, I really tried to get into that. We had a label back then. We were all based in Trondheim, and we all wanted to do something different there. And Trondheim is a traditionally very sort of like a rock kind of city. So
Hmm.
we're trying to, I mean, we're both trying to, introduce a very sort of hip hop and R&B based outlook on the music, but we were a label of, yeah, of immigrants and foreigners, and we had a Somali Tanzanian label head, and we had a Sri Lankan manager, and we had artists from Ghana, from Poland, stuff like that. So we try to make it very diverse. And then we just got the idea to do the Channel Cipher, because we were seeing that, okay, as we were, progressing, there were other acts and stuff, in and around Trondheim. And even though Trondheim is a very traditionally rock city, there was a good period in the 80s, late late 80s, early 90s, where like, the hip hop, scene in Norway wasn't Oslo based, but also
Yeah.
back then in Trondheim. So we had a couple of of these sort of like old heads who were also around at the time, and then we got idea to make the cipher. So I produced the beats for the second cipher, and then the label head did the beat for the first one, and then we just got like a professional film crew. People wrote their verses, and we just created this environment for people to bring what they loved, and it was a really really fun thing. It got
That's how it seemed. I mean,
yeah, it was good.
that was nice. That was nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
What happened to that? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Good question. Good question. I mean, I guess like one of the regrets is that I felt that we were really like onto something, but then move around.
Okay.
It just kind of, I think it just kind of like disintegrated. But I haven't really given it up though. I do feel like if I ever reach a point, if when I reach a point where I'm kind of um maybe like trying to work smarter instead of harder, and therefore I can create more time for myself. It would be
Yeah.
good to do like the whole label talent scouting A&R thing like properly from like your own company, and really pushing that, because in the music scene, what I've learned from it in Norway is that if you are there's a Norwegian expression called ildsjel, like if you have like a fire in your soul,
Yeah.
you get really far in the music scene because you're just always there.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's the same people who are like like always they're like pushing the tracks and asking for collaborations, or working hard to really impress, and those people end up winning
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
very often, and that's one of the things that I love about music is that there you have the 21-year-old basement rapper Norwegian boy who has grown up on Eminem and Mobb Deep, but then you also have the boy from Ghana who maybe really enjoys 70s 80s Motown disco
Yeah.
funk,
Yeah.
and then maybe a little bit of high life music, a little bit of hip life music,
Mhm.
and when they're both pushing in music, both of them can go very far. And I love that. I love that playing field. The example is I dare to wager that two of Norway's best rappers are Arif and Lars Vaular, and these
Yeah.
two demographically couldn't be
Different.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't be two
Yeah.
any more
Yeah.
different. But what they do, the boundaries that they push and stuff, is one of those really nice things where you could almost say that having this minority ethnic background is a huge
It's
advantage,
an
because
advantage.
it's
Yeah.
just it just allows you to express yourself differently, and
Mhm.
difference
And
tends to
people
be quite good.
love that authenticity.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, they do, and you can create an expression of your life in Norway, an
Yeah.
expression of how it is growing up here and growing up there and being from there, and and that creates a sound that is compelling to people, and
Mhm.
I really enjoy that about music. So yeah, it's
Nice.
good.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, man, this has been good. I'm tempted to continue a bit more. I got some questions,
Yeah.
some questions that just, we could just run through them real quick, and then try to wrap this up. Uh, Day-to-day challenges that you face in your everyday life. Could you just maybe just quickly
Yeah.
name something?
Well, I mean, there's always like a personal and a collective challenge. So
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
personal notes, my personal challenge on a day to day is definitely it's definitely sort of project management. You always want to do something like super 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 big,
time
and then
management, man.
and then
I
you
feel
throw in
you.
you throw in a bunch of time and a bunch of energy, and then you realize that it's not the best priority.
No,
So that's
no.
definitely a challenge. On a collective basis, I think a challenge is to, especially now, mm, during the ascent of Omicron,
Mm-hmm.
one challenge is to find this balance between looking ahead to something that is going to be good,
Yeah.
but also, hedging your bets so that you don't,
Lose
overextend
out. Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get burnt, because I feel that COVID did that and has been doing that, but it
Mm-hmm.
definitely did that, especially last year, or,
Mm-hmm.
or sorry, in 2020, where we were so certain that we were going to be out of this thing in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I think just realizing that, oh wow, like the end is potentially very far away, it has a bit of a psychological knock on you, because suddenly, even if you're going through a tough period, and I mean, a tough period could be now for many people, because look outside, it's pitch
Yeah.
black.
Yeah.
And it has been pitch black since 4.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of seasonal affective disorder, or seasonal mood, basically. You kind of, normally you would bank on the fact, okay, but it's fine, in a month or so, I'm going to travel there, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go there, I'm going to, see this person live, I'm going to look at this picture, this movie, whatever. And then suddenly you can't really do that. And now, even though you can, you're still kind of, going, yeah, but what if I can't do? So, so I think that sort of that collective insecurity about what's going to happen is a bit of a challenge, and it makes me try to be wary of, not, um, yeah, not overextending your expectations, pretty much.
Yeah. I can get that. I get that. Hmm. That's interesting. I haven't thought of it in that way, but it's true. I think we all feel it in a way. Just
Yeah, yeah. I think so. I think so.
yeah, yeah. I was some what you would call some advantages or privileges that you have as an African living in
Hmm.
Norway,
Yeah.
and that's compared to maybe your say your Ghanaian
Hmm.
compatriots.
Yeah. I think there is, so I don't know whether Ghanaians would agree with me when I say this, but
In
I
this way, I mean in a way
yeah,
like Ghanaians living in Ghana,
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
Ghanaian
exactly.
your
Yeah,
age, the
yeah,
advantage you
yeah,
might have over, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, yeah, I think like that's it's the same point. I don't know whether they will agree with me, but I think one huge advantage is that, um just be having been exposed to different ways of living.
yeah,
So when you get to know somebody, and that person lives a radically different life than you do, you are
hmm
also at the same time learning how that person is choosing to live their life.
hmm
And especially maybe in Ghana, we have a very sort of set way of living, due to our religion and our customs and our traditions. So there's not too much space for, I mean, it doesn't even have to be like an alternative lifestyle, but there's not too
hmm
much space for different beliefs, for
right.
example.
mm
And I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't say I'm a sort of a proponent of, everyone has to accept alternative lifestyles,
hmm
but I think there's definitely a huge advantage in being able to acknowledge that they exist,
yes,
and and acknowledge their worth,
yeah,
independent of what
you
you
think,
live your life to be,
yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah. I think that is a huge advantage that I get to experience here on a daily basis. And it's also a huge advantage that it's a part of the human, um, uh, view of worth here. Much more here than it is at home in Ghana. I think that's probably, like, I would say, like my biggest advantage. And other advantages are maybe just like more material stuff, just being
yeah,
able to
yeah,
move around in life much more, or being able to come to Ghana for a
hmm
vacation.
yeah, yeah,
That's a huge advantage, basically,
right.
because many people would do a lot to be able to,
Hmm
leave Ghana for a long time.
True, true,
So
true.
yeah, yeah.
That's a really awesome answer. Uh, okay, your worst. What would you say your worst experience would be? Um, One that stands out the most.
I mean, there was one experience in junior high school. I had just moved to Norway. I don't think I'd been I just moved back to Norway. I don't think I'd been there for more than a year and a half, maybe. So this is like maybe ninth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and we had uh like a ski day, winter activity day, which for a boy from Ghana is just useless. But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but a whole day dedicated to being out in the mountains, and
Uh,
it was actually a pretty nice day. And an event kind of transpired where some boys who were I believe like a year my senior or something, as we were going back up to the top of the mountain, I heard them like shouting some stuff towards me, and then some select
mhm.
words
Yeah.
about my ethnicity, and some select sounds and stuff. And um and I thought it was strange because I didn't know these boys. I
Hmm.
had never spoken to them before. I'd seen them around, but never spoken to them before. And I actually I didn't really take too much mind to it. So I'd gone up, I'd taken like an archibret and just
Hmm.
like come all the way down again.
Yeah.
And two of my friends who were beside me, they were like, what did those boys say to you? Like
Hmm.
we thought we heard something, and they were like, and I told them what they said, and these boys they got very upset. So then
Hmm.
they went to talk to my teacher, and then long story short, it became a whole thing with the principal and these boys and stuff like that, where we had to talk about it,
Hmm.
and we had to just come to the bottom of what happened, which
Hmm.
I felt also was very strange because I mean there was really nothing to come to the bottom to. These boys said this,
And they think
and
how they think.
yeah, and they think, you know, I wasn't entirely sure what we were going to talk about. But what made it the worst experience was my mother's reaction when I told her what had happened. So I didn't care about this too much because I'd always kind of grown up to be, my mom always had a saying that, if someone calls you stupid and you know that you aren't stupid, why bother, And I
Hmm.
was like, agree. That sounds like a very peaceful way to live. So, I let people call me whatever they want, as long as I knew that I wasn't that, and I mean, in their opinion.
Hmm.
But that particular incident that really got to my mom. She was very upset. She was different versions of angry and very sad, and so she marched to the school, and she had a very angry conversation with the school counselor, and because she thought it was really strange that I had been put in the same room with these boys
Yeah.
talking about what happened, and then after this meeting, we shook hands, and then we went our separate ways, and then
Hmm.
the principal was like, job done.
Yeah, it's fine.
you know and my mom, she came to the school, and she absolutely tore into them, and that was really upsetting to me because I saw that it really hurt her, you know and I think it hurt my mom, and that also hurt me because we've always been kind of like, yeah, but we haven't harmed anybody, we
Uh,
haven't we are just here to live our lives, work hard, and not stand out too much.
mhm,
So this whole situation became a spotlight thing, and I
mhm,
think my
mhm,
mom really didn't like it, and I didn't like it either because of that. And that was a sort of a very yeah, I guess you could say, unfortunate situation.
mhm,
But short of that, there's not been too many bad situations about being
mhm.
an African man here. I think Norwegians are, for the most part, very friendly people. The worst
Correct.
situations that have come after that have been, especially in the aftermath of last year,
Yeah.
where you're having a conversation with Norway that's, oh yeah, but you guys also
Mhm,
do have racism
mhm,
here, and this very sort of vehement opposition to it. No, we don't.
Yeah,
What are you talking about? You are safe here. You don't have police shooting you here.
right,
What are you
right.
talking about? And just trying to kind of explain to them that, yeah, but that's not the only face of racism. Before you get to that kind of racism, this is the kind of racism that exists.
Yeah.
It's a stage. And just trying to get Norwegian friends, politicians to understand and to recognize that the fact that there is racism in the system here doesn't mean that the person I'm talking to is a racist.
Right, right.
And I think trying to disable that causality has been super, super difficult because people get really offended when you suggest that there is racism here. Which is, I'm just like, I always find it a bit strange that you get more offended by the notion of there being racism here than actually dealing with the racism.
Right.
That's the Norwegian problem, I feel. But even there, there 2020 helped because the conversations that we're having now have just so much more vocabulary than it did before. And now we're having conversations on a very fundamentally good level because there are many excellent people, of African, Asian, South American backgrounds who are very skilled at talking and thinking, and they're very good at demanding action.
Yeah.
And that's what you need, basically. You need a generation of people who are just done accepting everything, and people who are willing to actually get in the faces of of lawmakers and stuff like that. I mean, just before I run off, just like one quick example. There's this lady called Liz, and Liz is sort of like a proper firecracker of a woman. And I think 2 days ago she had a Facebook status about Telia, the phone company or the telecommunications company.
Right.
And how, I don't know whether you've seen too many Telia ads lately, but Telia have begun a very aggressive campaign to show how diverse Telia as a company is. And that's all well and nice. That's fantastic. But then Liz pulls up, a link to Telia's website, where it's the site is called Telia's ledelse, so the people who are the leaders in Telia, which, surprise, surprise, are, 8 out of 10 are 55 plus year old white Norwegian men. Absolutely no one of any different ethnic background in the leadership. So then Liz called this out, on Facebook, and that's the beautiful thing about social media is that you can tag people, so you can hold them accountable for stuff. Which, I mean, I would never dream of doing. I'm too shy of conflict, but I love that people do that. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's good reading. So Liz, tags them, and then, slowly but surely, you see, the occasional white man pop up in her status. Hi, I'm Chris. I work for Telia, and I completely agree with you that more needs to be done. We have told the leadership, but we are doing everything that we can. So some of them, are kind of going like, we agree with you. We are doing everything we can, but most of them are still kind of like quite blasé, going like, I think we shouldn't focus so much on the differences between us, but we all have to cheer each other on. Look at all the good things that we're able to do, and don't dwell on the bad stuff. And that is a privileged thing to say.
Yeah.
So if you are Telia and you say, yeah, but we just shot like 5 ads full of diversity and we spent so much money on it. Yeah, but your leadership is still white. The people who are taking home the real money, they are white men. So It
And those
doesn't.
are just
Doesn't
actors
matter.
and actresses in their
Yeah, yeah,
campaigns,
no,
you
no,
know. So
yeah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't
mhm,
matter. I mean, it's this a good friend of mine, Asra Halilovic, who I work with in Trondheim, on a diversity program. She had this fantastic metaphor, which I keep coming back to because it's so spot on in terms of the fallacy in diversity. It's, Telia opening the door to minorities and going, welcome in, hey guys, come on in, here's your
mhm,
seat, please have a seat. And then you sit there, but then the rest of the room goes back to their corner to talk amongst themselves.
mhm,
And then, occasionally they, go back to you like, how do you find it here? You good? You
mhm,
okay? Want some
mhm,
snacks? Water? You good? Okay. And then they go back, right? So there's no real point because when you enter the room, you can't furnish it. You still can't implement your ideas. Your cultural uniqueness, which is why they hired you in the first place, does not come to the fore because you have to act like everybody else.
mhm,
When in reality, everybody else is supposed to learn from you.
mhm,
That's the whole point of you being there.
mhm, mhm,
So, so yeah, Liz kind of pointing that out, and then and seeing all these comments, which I mean definitely was expected. It definitely it gets you to think that maybe this could be one very good way of doing it.
yeah, yeah,
Is to just is to have these people just go, you know what, we are tired of the equality talk. Maybe you poke the better to bit and see what happens.
mhm,
And I think that is definitely a way to go because status quo is great for those who are on top.
mhm.
Always those who are on top don't want to shake status quo.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. Unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Yeah.
But this has been wonderful, man. Really, it's
Yeah.
been really
It's been good.
good to talk about these things. With just one quick question, I'm starting to ask all my guests at the end of the show now. Uh, is George single? Is George a single man? I mean, just to put it out there and let the ladies
Yeah.
know, is this intelligent dude a single man and ready to mingle?
He is.
Yes, he
Yeah,
is.
he
All
is.
right.
He is. Yeah.
Well, y'all heard it. You heard it, and yeah. Listen, I'm gonna. Yes, sir. I'm gonna drop your information in the
Yeah,
description,
yeah.
and people can follow you and see what you're up to. I'm following you, and I see you got some really cool stuff. You've been on Instagram for a while, it seems like.
Yeah, I have. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
an OG Instagrammer.
Right. So, but wonderful, man. Thank you for being
Thank you
here
so much.
again. This has been wonderful to chop this up, and let's keep
Excellent.
in touch. I will get
Yeah,
in touch
for
with
sure.
you again, concerning what
Yeah,
we just spoke about and see
the
what we
history of
can
that.
do there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank
All
you.
right, man. Thanks again for the time. That's wonderful. All right, folks, that's what it was. Until next time, that's the show. Thanks for watching. Bye.